They caught her.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
And welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. Welcome back to NewsTreason, Channel 17, and the Q News Review with the professor himself, the one and only Mike King of RealNewsAndHistory.com. Mike, happy Wednesday, my friend. Good to see you. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. How you doing, Dave? Hello to all your listeners, viewers.
Doing well. Thank you. I see you guys all piling in. Special shout out to everybody coming over from Space Shots Show. Shout out to everybody over on Build and X. Thank you guys all for being here each and every Wednesday. This is episode number 86 of the Q News Review with Mike King. And we got a lot to get through tonight. So let's just jump right into it. We're going to talk a little bit about the airport, the ongoing airport situation. Mike's got something that he's bringing to me tonight that's actually something I haven't had a chance to dive into yet very much. So I'll be very interested to hear about that. We're going to dive in a little bit more into the entire Israel and Iran situation. And of course, we'll finish up with some history going back to the maybe great, maybe not so great FDR, Pearl Harbor situation. So as always, a lot to get through tonight. But Mike, you know, it's interesting. We were just talking last week, kind of spitballing on how this entire Iran presentation, I guess we should call it, may play out. And kind of right now, it's looking like your prediction seems to be what's playing out, being that this is dragging out maybe a little bit longer than I might have anticipated. Was just looking before we came on the air. You know, you got to take polling with a grain of salt, but about 59, they're estimating right now 59% of Americans are opposed to the war at this point. Obviously, you know, gas prices, all those other things building up. And you were saying last week that you kind of hoped it would go this way in the narrative space because it would give us more opportunity to make some connections with Israel. And well, wouldn't you know it, it would seem that that's exactly what's playing out. Have you been paying any attention to this the Joe Kent situation?
Oh yeah, that's part of it. And, you know, that was my hypothesis from day one. And I stressed it's a hypothesis. We have to let time elapse. But with every passing week we're trying to show, it seems like we've moved more and more in that direction. The two are now inseparably linked, Trump and Bibi. Okay? So if this war goes badly, if it drags on, it's bad for Israel. It's very bad for Israel. The image of Israel. Israel, again, I emphasize every week, it's totally under submission. I believe Bibi was executed years ago, but you've got to kill the after state in order to get to the real story. And it just continues to seem that's where it's going. You know, there's still a number of avenues they can go with this. One could be Trump wants to wrap it up and get out of there, and then Bibi does something reckless, drag his back in, right? Or they could go the other route and just drag it out so it becomes more unpopular. We don't know, you know, which pathway they're going to take, but it does seem like it's going in that direction. That this is really all been designed to wreck Israel's image after the fact. And what would really, I mean, it would be great if they kept us in this fake war. That would be very damaging to Israel. But above all else, you know, what I would like to see is a fake false flag. How cool would that be? Initially blamed on Iran, and then it slipped on Israel, and now that opens up everything. So, but we'll have to see. There's still a while for this to play out, but it's certainly not diminishing this idea of the Israeli dog wagging, the Israeli tail wagging the American dog. It's intensifying, and in fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but Iran, or rather maybe it's White Hat Productions, who knows, they're really intensifying their anti-war propaganda. around this theme of Bibi controlling Trump. And it's all over Twitter, by the way, which again tells you this is fake, because in wartime you would not allow enemy propaganda on American news media. Even voluntarily, Musk would not allow it. Yeah, here it is. It's proliferating.
Did you see the video that the Iran military news put out today? I'm guessing that might be what you're talking about.
I've seen several of them. They're really hardcore.
I wasn't going to run this tonight, but since you mentioned it, let me quickly run this.
Yeah.
Some intense stuff right there. Just so you guys can see the sauce, this is the actual post right here that was put up. May God's vengeance for Gaza's children. Epstein Island and Mid-Av School rest in Iran's mighty hands. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's being put out right now.
It's being put out, and this character Elon Musk, who's part of the show, as we know, is putting his thumb on the scale to amplify that. It was all over my Twitter feed. I never subscribe to or follow the Iranian military site.
Right.
And all of these videos are popping up. The audience is us.
Right.
I don't mean Anons, I mean the American people.
Yep.
This message is Bibi, Ms. Trump. And, I made that analogy in an earlier tweet. What did I say? Do you remember? I said Trump has handcuffed himself to Netanyahu, and he's jumping into the ocean with a millstone around Netanyahu's ankle. And at the right moment, he'll escape and leave Netanyahu to dry. So when you see that video and they're jumping off the precipice, that's the first thing I was thinking. I wonder if they copied that from me. But anyway.
Yeah.
But that's and that now was linked on the Drudge Report. So this is obviously the target is the American public. But it's not the Iranian military targeting us with this. It's a Q operation.
Yep.
So like I say, every week it just seems like we're moving more and more towards the fulfillment of my initial hypothesis. So let's see what happens next week.
Yep. Very quickly before we get into your presentation, I think this is super important. Last week, I think it was last week, we talked a little bit. I did a little presentation on the patterns of narrative deployment, narrative seeding, kind of how things make it from rumor to social media out to the normal influencers. They get amplified, then it makes it into Fox News and the other mainstream. Speaking of the Joe Kent situation, I want to talk very quickly about what we refer to as the cross-pollination of narratives, right? We know everything we're seeing right now is a giant spider web, whether it's Epstein, whether it's this Iran situation. There's overlap in everything. And the Joe Kent situation, in my humble opinion, is a perfect example of that. Funny thing, Mike, by the way, lots of love your way from Dallas. Had a lot of people asking for you down there. It was a great event.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but we had originally had General Flynn signed on to be one of the keynote speaker at the event. And there's contracts and stuff that go with that. And about 2 weeks before the event, he had to cancel. And, unfortunate, we still had a fantastic event. I don't think anyone actually even canceled their tickets because of that. But it would have been cool to have him there, but it didn't work out. And so we're trying to say to ourselves, it's certainly not because it's a Q event, because he had 6 months to figure that out. Like, it wasn't like he just decided he'd want to be around us. There was something else going on, clearly, that he had to attend to. Well, and sure enough, we come to find out, where he was during the same weekend? He was at an event with Candace Owens and Joe Kent.
Oh,
so
interesting. Yeah.
Ain't that interesting, right? And who is all over the news? I mean, this dude, I have, obviously, we're not going to go through them tonight. We'll probably get to them later in the week. I have 12 different clips of Joe Kent. I mean, you name the podcast, that's where he's been, all over the place. But now they're connecting two narratives, and this is what I find fascinating. So I just want to quickly go through this. First of all, let's look at who Joe Kent is, right?
Yeah.
Born 1980, CIA officer, Army veteran, politician. He served in the Army Special Forces. He was a Green Beret. Multiple combat deployments, primarily in Iraq, known for counterterrorism and intelligence-related missions, rose to the rank of Chief Warrant Officer. After the military, he worked for the CIA, focused on counterterrorism operations. His wife, as we certainly know, was unfortunately killed in Syria in 2019. And when he was in the CIA, he was under the Directorate of Operations, which is a branch responsible for human intelligence, right? Which means running sources, covert sources, right? So there's a lot of psychology, right? That's not considered a PSYOP group, but there is a ton of psychological training that goes into anybody that is running human asset. My point is, this is exactly the kind of guy that you would pluck out to be running some kind of PSYOP to bring attention to the situation in Israel. And as you guys know, we showed this the other day. On the left side was Donald Trump highlighting Joe Kent back in 2020, talking about we need to wipe out Iran's ballistic capability. He was calling out that screenshot on the right. Again, I'm not going to play the clip. We already did it on our previous show. Was him in August of 2024 railing on about how we have to do something about Iran and their proxies, right? So when we get to the point where this man resigns and actually puts in his letter that there was no imminent threat to our nation from Iran, that, in my opinion, should be all you need to know. To say that this narrative is complete BS. So then the question becomes why? Well, he immediately starts making the circuit. I believe it was the next day. He was on a interview with Tucker Carlson connecting our actions in Iran to Israel. Right? If you remember last week, we showed the Tucker Carlson clip where Tucker Carlson himself was talking about that school bombing, which probably didn't happen in Iran, where exactly 170 children died, and how it was likely Israel that gave us that intel. Let me just quickly play a clip of Joe Kent in one of his most recent interviews.
We were headed towards war with Iran regardless, and that Israel's intention to strike them just changed the timing, or do you think they dragged us into the conflict entirely?
I believe, and I think the data supports this, that Israel drove the entire conflict, that Israel walked us into this conflict. We have a lot of data to draw upon in the public domain. Since President Trump came back into office in January of 2025, we watched the Iranians observe a very strict escalation ladder. Now, prior to President Trump coming back into office under the Biden administration, our forces in Iraq and Syria were under constant fire and attack from Iranian proxies inside Iraq and Syria that basically kicked off after October 7th. We saw a very aggressive posture coming from the Iranians. Right when President Trump came back into office, those attacks stopped. The Iranians put a lid on their proxies, basically because they knew two things. They knew, number one, that President Trump was not to be toyed with. This is the same president that killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian proxy terror master who walked all over Obama, walked all over Bush, enabled the killing of hundreds of American soldiers in Iraq. He also killed his deputy in that same strike, Abu Mahdi Mohandas. So the Iranians understood this was not Obama, this was not Bush, this was not Biden, this was someone that you actually have to listen to. But they also knew that President Trump wasn't going to take the bait and get sucked into some series of regime change wars, and that he actually was a very pragmatic deal maker, and he was someone the Iranians could deal with. And once again, the Iranians knew that them and President Trump both agreed that they couldn't have a nuclear weapon. The Iranians' approach to nuclear weapons I think is very pragmatic, but very, very important because it ties into the broader context of American policy in the region. The Iranians knew that if they said, hey, we're going to get rid of all of our ability to enrich uranium, or all of our ability to potentially make a nuclear weapon, that they more than likely would meet a similar fate that Gaddafi and Libya met, because Gaddafi did the same thing. He said, hey, I'm going to give up all my nuclear weapons. Fast forward a couple years, the next thing you know, he's getting regime changed and executed by his own people. They also knew that if they said, hey, we're going to sprint towards getting a nuclear weapon, or even like be coy about having a nuclear weapon, that they might meet the same fate as Saddam Hussein. So what the Iranians said was, hey, we're going to have the ability to enrich uranium to a certain percentage, but we're not going to make a nuclear weapon. And this prohibition had held since 2004. Again, this gave a great opportunity for President Trump and the Iranians to get to the negotiating table. Even when the 12-day war kicked off in June, the Iranians did not attack us. They didn't want us drawn into the conflict. They realized this was mostly the Israelis attempting to draw us into the conflict. So they didn't attack us. Then after Midnight Hammer, the Iranians only struck back in a very limited way. They shot back the same number of missiles as we dropped bombs on their nuclear facilities, and they shot them at basically a relatively empty quadrant of one of our bases in Qatar.
So there it is. I could play 20 of those. That's the narrative.
And he also was talking about as you know, I'm sure, Erica Kirk and the fake Butler assassination. So he's giving clues that that's where that's going as well.
Right.
So this is an anti-Israel op. Dave, let me shut this fountain off. It might be a little distracting. I've got
go ahead.
Over here.
No problem. That's exactly where I wanted to go next, and this is what I mean when I talk about the cross-pollination of narratives. Exactly what Mike just said. So, if you guys didn't see the headlines, now the other thing that Joe Kent has woven into his discussions is exactly what you just said: the Charlie Kirk assassination. And just today, there were a ton of clips going around of the powers that be at Turning Point USA freaking out because basically Joe Kent is saying that if he was asked, he would testify to aid the defense of the accused killer, Tyler Robinson. And what he's been saying is that, and again, I'm not going to play the clip tonight for time's sake, but he went on with Mark Levin and basically said he knows. He has things he can't talk about, that there was elements that were completely ignored by the FBI. And this is just very quickly the summary that I put up today. Joe Kent says he's skeptical that Tyler Robinson, who confessed to killing Charlie Kirk, was the lone shooter. That accusation could undermine the prosecutor's case against Robinson. Kent said he knew of the risk before he decided to speak out. The former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, says the FBI did not properly investigate the assassination last fall of conservative leader Charlie Kirk. Quote, the FBI was pretty forceful in saying we couldn't investigate further, he told the public. I saw no action being taken. Robinson confessed to killing Kirk in a text message and a note to his trans-identified romantic partner. His defense team may now be able to use Kent's allegations that the government is suppressing evidence and did not do a proper investigation to their advantage. Kent said he knew that he might be called as a witness before he made his statements, and that a foreign nexus may have been involved in Kirk's assassination. I was definitely warned of that over and over again, said Kent. If I end up having to play that role, then I'll do it. It's not something I'm seeking. When pressed, this testimony could help the Tyler Robinson defense, Kent said, then honestly, so be it. If it gets us to the truth, that's obviously a risk I'm taking. And that's my commentary at the bottom. I said, gee, I wonder who that foreign nexus might be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just quickly show that because we were discussing this on Rambo's show earlier. And quite honestly, I know it's not the case with the people in this audience here. But you will see, if you were to go on X, there is, I believe it's being done just to draw attention to this stuff. There's a lot of accusations being thrown around right now at Tucker Carlson, at Candace Owens, at General Flynn for being at an event with Candace Owens. which in the wrong hands, people will take it as, some people are taking it as Flynn and Carlson and others acting as the narrative is they're being bad actors, and undermining MAGA. But Mike, how many times have we seen this playbook before? How many times have we seen this playbook before?
Yeah.
Every time somebody is posting about this, I will repeat the same thing we say all the time. A controversy breeds conversation, and that's exactly what you're seeing right now. And to in my opinion, to see a guy like this who probably knows more than anybody, save for a few people, about the dangers of Iran and the situation with Israel and all the other things that we're talking about, coming out and just being everywhere right now, and now cross-pollinating it, as we say, with the Charlie Kirk thing. And we've always been speculating on the direction that's heading in. I think we could safely conclude this is a fairly obvious psyop, but as always, we leave it up to the audience to decide what they believe.
Yeah. And something like this would be the only thing to shake the final bastion of support for the shitty little state. And that's mainly your boomer Christian evangelical Schofield type Christian Zionists. They remain firm. The last polling data I saw, and that's interesting that such polls are even being conducted, first of all. What's going on here? And secondly, that they're being amplified by the mainstream media now. But Israel's underwater, like 40-something% approval. But the bulk of that, at least 80% of that, is the Christian evangelical boomer Schofield Bible types who regard Trump very highly and Charlie Kirk. They love Charlie Kirk. So this is the sort of thing that will disillusion them. And then Israel's got nothing left, and then we could really get to the good stuff. And that's all necessary preparation if we are to ultimately, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, get to 9/11 truth. Okay.
Yep, exactly right.
So I like where this is going. It just seems to be more and more progress each week, getting us to the point where this character, Bibi Netanyahu, does something really, really outrageous.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I know for people it's slow and it's painful, but for the Epstein files to truly have the impact that they need to, right, beyond just the horrors of children underage and all the things that go on there, you need to first demonstrate to people that there is this level of control that we all know from the state of Israel, right? That's exactly what they're doing right now. They're using the Tuckers and the Candaces and everyone else to say the things that Trump and his circle can't. And it's exactly what we've seen with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Joe Kent. As I said earlier, my prediction, I bet you're going to see other people that are going to break ranks with Trump's administration, because those are the voices that'll carry the most weight. Everybody's listening to this guy right now, and there's no way to avoid at least the question of, hey, maybe there's more to this. Maybe it's not us calling the shots. Then when you get to the Epstein files, that's the why. That's the why they have the control to that level. So to me, they go hand in hand. And I agree with you. They're as we've said a million times, they're keeping this Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk thing alive and connecting it to Israel. In fact, again, he's said it in other clips. I'm not going to play them tonight, but he specifically mentioned Israel with regards to that, and that's how you get people to start thinking about that. So, to me, it's uncomfortable. It's confusing for many people. It causes a lot of arguments and battles on Twitter. But like I said, Mike, I don't personally care if there's a month that goes by where it looks like MAGA is splitting and people are breaking ranks with Trump, because that's not how the military looks at it. They're looking at it 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and they know they're going to weave things back onto the road. So let the people argue it out, because it doesn't matter what it looks like today. It matters what it looks like in a few months from now.
That's right.
Exactly right. Well, let's jump into the first piece because obviously everyone has been inundated with airport news. I was mentioning Mike the other day. It was hilarious when we went through DFW on our way back from the event. We walked in 6:30 a.m. on a Monday morning, which is one of the busiest travel times for business travelers. There was a 12-minute wait at the TSA pre-check line and a 5-minute wait at the regular line, and there was a camera crew sitting there. The guy was like half asleep, just waiting to like get his money shot. And I've been doing this constantly. This is as of 6 p.m. today, just to give people an idea. These are the top 20 airports and the current wait times. Take a look for yourselves. 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 20, 15, 20, 10, 10, 20, 20, 20. Even at LaGuardia Airport, which we're about to talk about, which is notorious even on a good day for having long lines, 20 to 30 minutes. So they've been pounding us with this airport stop. Makes perfect sense given the lack of funding and the battle going on optically with DHS. I think your point about a potential false flag is absolutely still on the table, because that could be another Israel connection, and it would be a twofer. It would give people the opportunity to say, hey, look what happens when you don't fund DHS. So that's something we're keeping our eyes on. But let's talk about this LaGuardia Airport plane crash, because as I said, I saw it. I looked at it a little bit with the travel on Monday and everything. I didn't have a lot of chance to dive into it. So when you brought this up, it piqued my interest. So I'll be interested to hear your take on this. Let's jump into it.
Well, there's the image on the New York Times front page. And for me, in an instant, the first thing that struck me was the complete destruction of the cockpit and front part of that plane just from hitting a fire truck. And, any 9/11 truther worth of salt is going to see that and immediately harken back to that image of the commercial airliners just penetrating the Twin Towers, which are solid steel exoskeleton, as if it was nothing. So this is totally incongruent with that. Which is not a surprise, but this wasn't what led me to believe, and I emphasize believe. I have to leave open the possibility it was an accident, but I don't think so. I think this is a psyop, if the event even happened. And one of the first indicators is just the image itself. A fire truck is like, 10, 12 feet tall, and this passenger plane, it's on the smaller side. It's also about 10, 12 feet tall. You would think it would just kind of carve the underneath of the plane, just maybe damage the underbelly. But this looks like a head-on, and it's just not consistent because the plane is much taller than the truck. But my first impression about seeing this image wasn't so much to go right to PSYOP, but just to harken back to this is another proof of or another debunking of 9/11. Because look how easily this plane crumbled. And what is an airplane? It's essentially a flying soda can. It's made of aluminum, a little thicker, but it's hollow aluminum. And we're told that penetrated the Twin Towers without the aid of explosives. Now, it's possible something struck the towers, drones, missiles, and it was coordinated. It was timed precisely at the moment the explosives went off. Because there are people on the ground who insist they saw something, but there's no way that passenger jets penetrated the towers like that. That's an impossibility.
Yep.
I'd like to make the analogy to that would be like a soda can penetrating a manhole cover.
Right.
I mean, really, just can't be done.
Yep.
So that's my first impression, and I put, you always have to put aside. We have our preconceived notions based on precedent, which is normal, which is healthy, because you have to have a general sense of precedent when you're evaluating things. But the rule is, not everything's a conspiracy. You still got to look at each case individually. But upon doing that, it just becomes more and more, the term is reasonable suspicion. I think this was a PSYOP, a white hat PSYOP. And I'll explain my reasons. Let's go to the next clip here. It just so happens that this event occurred on the exact date, March 22nd. of a tragedy in 1992. I don't know if you remember this, but there was an incident.
I didn't realize it was the same date, though. Wow.
Exact same date, because this happened late Sunday night, actually. And that plane just crashed very shortly after. It like tumbled and it went into the bay. It was like 50 people on the plane. About half of them died and half of them survived. And so I distinctly remember that. I mean, I'm here in the New York, New Jersey area, as were you. That was a big deal back then. But it happened on the exact same date, 34 years ago. 34. 17 times 2. And they will often use that number, 34, as we know, because that's like the next multiple of 17. So again, it's just another thing that makes you go, makes you scratch your head. And there's the image, and there's the headline from 1992. Tragedy on takeoff, LaGuardia crash, kills 25 people.
Mike.
Skids into the bay upside down. Rescuers had to race against the rising tide. I mean, it went in upside down and kind of flipped. It's kind of miraculous that half the people survived. Those waters are
Mike,
quite frigid, I would imagine.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
You said 34 years to the day, 322, right? 322, 2026 adds up to 17.
Does it?
3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 6. You drop the 0.
How did I miss that one? Boom.
Adds up to 17.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There you go. And if you look, if you could back up now to the previous slide of the front page, I think they had. No, it's not this one, but there is another image where it clearly says 322. Now, by the way, someone pointed out on Twitter, and it's a very interesting theory. If we go back to that image there, because this is the image everybody saw in their newspapers on TV. You see, it says E4 through 22. And then there's another one where it said 34. And if you read the Q post 4 through 22 and then 34, basically those are the posts very early on that established the whole thing and that the shit's going to hit the fan. So, I don't know if that's part of it. But there is another image where it says 322. And I didn't think to add the date in. So there you go. 34 years, exactly 34 years after this plane crash at LaGuardia. Now, if we go to the next slide here, and this is important because Q made it known to us on several occasions. This is just one of them. Q post 259, 7 out of 10 plane crashes are targeted kills. Those who know never sleep. So now you have to really ask yourself, is this a calm? The clues are starting to add up. And you can't help but just miss the inconsistency there between the planes penetrating the Twin Towers and this one all crumpled up.
And the fact that this is taking place right as airports, TSA, DHS, short staffing, all of it is being pushed to the forefront.
Yeah. And another indicator of scripted psyop in these cases, you'll generally find these little side stories that come out of it. That when you look at them, they're so absurd. Recall on 9/11 the story of the fireman who rode the whole wave down 80 floors. He rode the collapse. Do you remember that one?
Yep.
Sandy Hook. You had the heroic teacher who shielding students. There's always these kind of little anecdotal type side stories that the script writers put in there. Well, we come to learn there's this one of the survivors, surviving crew members. They say the pilot and the co-pilot were killed, so they say. But a stewardess was ejected from her seat onto the runway,
right?
And she survived. It's just stuff like that. It's like
300 feet apparently, a football field.
Was it 300 feet?
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that. Yeah. Oh boy.
So now, speaking of 9/11 and the inconsistency and the damage with the plane, I guess this is a good time to remind people of what Trump said on 9/12. He said this in the street interview that you're looking at there. And he also said it during a news program where he was calling in to WPIX. He was being interviewed. He was adamant. He couldn't understand it. So here's what Trump said on the street being interviewed. This was an unbelievably powerful building. When I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. How could a plane, even a 767, possibly go through the steel? I happened to think that they had not only a plane, but had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously. And where were those strange art students doing their dirty work? We know this. And those exact same floors,
Yep.
where these holes just blew open.
Yep.
I just can't imagine anything going through that wall. Trump knows he's a builder. Not that you have to be a builder or an engineer, architect, or physicist to understand this. My analogy is just very simple. I think anybody can grasp that. A soda can cannot go through a manhole cover. Oh, but what about the mass? It's a much bigger the plane, but that's all relative to what you're hitting. What about the mass of the building? You ever been to the World Trade Center? It's a weird building because it's an exoskeleton. All the steel's on the outside, and it's just, they're like redwood trees made of the most solid, powerful. They build everything to excess of code, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And not to mention, each one of those floors is filled with about 8 inches of concrete as well.
That's right. Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah. So what you saw with that fire truck, that's what would have happened to the entire plane. Would have crumpled up and just fell to the street.
Yep.
No doubt about it. And it's sort of interesting. They spent all these millions of dollars on doing investigation work, right? Did anybody think to come up with the idea of why don't we rebuild a tower to scale, say 50 feet tall, and fly a drone into it, again, to scale of the 767, everything to scale. So everything stays relative with the jet fuel and everything. And let's see if we could duplicate what happened on 9/11. You can't, otherwise they'd have done it. So you can screw around with math equations all you want to explain it. Unless you do it in an experiment, you got nothing. And nobody did it, and nobody can do it. And this incident in LaGuardia just reinforces that. Not so much for normies because they don't think critically like that, like we do. But certainly for us, as soon as you see that thing crumpled up, I mean, in an instant, I went back to 9/11. There it is. It's an impossibility.
And a lot of people did, Mike. There may be some people watching that may question whether or not, and like you said, we don't know. But I'll tell you one thing: there was a whole lot of people circulating that picture, saying, "Hey, isn't it interesting what happens when a plane hits a truck, but not what happens when it hits a steel building?" So, one way or another, it had the intended effect.
Well, I'm sure it stimulated some normies. One was explained like that. They may not have been able to make that connection on their own, but if somebody says, "Hey, how come that didn't happen on 9/11?" Good question. So I lean heavily towards this being a psyop. The 34s, the 17, the weirdness of it all, the exact anniversary of that plane crash, 7 out of 10 are targeted kills.
Mike, there was also another anomaly, which is they were claiming that if you understand how an airport works, basically every vehicle that's on a runway, on any taxiway or runway, obviously planes included, has a transponder, has like a beacon on it, so they know where anything is. They're claiming that this truck just happened not to have that.
Yeah. And if you're crossing a runway, you'd think you'd want to look both ways. I mean, how do you miss a plane coming at you?
Especially, I think this took place it was at night, I believe. I know the pictures were during the day.
Yeah,
but
10:30 p.m. ish.
Look, if you've ever been on a plane, next time you're on a plane, especially if you're, when you get to that point where you make the turn and you're perpendicular to the runway at night, wait, and you're waiting for another plane to land. Look to your left, and it's like there's a these planes have these massive landing lights, right? So if you look down a runway when there's a plane on final approach, it's impossible to miss it.
Yeah.
And the sound, especially at night. Yeah.
And the sound. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing adds up. So.
I'm with you on this. And yeah, there's
here's what I'm talking about. And here's your side by side. Okay. On the left, fire truck did that. On the right, reinforced steel beams as big as redwood trees. No problem. Went right through. In fact, even the tips of the wings, you know how flimsy the wings are
right
on a big plane? They're very flimsy, especially the tips. I mean, planes are very light relative to their size because they have to stay airborne, obviously. And those wings you can't even step on them. I think there's a sign on the flaps, do not step, something
there is.
That.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the wings, even the tippy top of the wings, you're seeing half the plane penetrate right there, but the entire plane goes in. Even the tail fins go in with zero resistance. It's like the old Wile E. Coyote cartoons when he would run through a wall and make an image. You see the outline of his body going through the wall. That's just totally absurd. So what happened there? I mean, that's got to be a hologram, for sure. But that's where the art students were doing their dirty work, and that's all documented in my book. Months in advance, there were actually articles on these characters working in the buildings in a regular New York Times. They were said to be like artists, and they were just doing projects with the lights and stuff. But this is Crash Course 9/11 Inside Job. It's a 1-hour read. You can get this one on my Amazon page. It's also part of the PDF package. You can get all 35 of my books for just $29. But definitely get this and use that as a weapon, because it's stuff like this. No, even an army could see it, because we're far enough removed from the passion and the emotion of 9/11 that you can really begin to appreciate the ridiculousness of it all.
Yep. I keep that on my coffee table for just that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the wing picture I was yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Well, let's go from left to right. There on the left, that's an actual cannonball from Revolutionary War. Right? It's made of iron, and it's solid. It's not hollow like an airplane. So the density is off the charts. Traveling at least at the speed of the airplane that hit the towers, probably faster. Because I would imagine, when you're 1,000 miles above sea level, these things don't fly all that fast because the air's not thin enough. So that's going as fast or faster, and it's solid iron, and it's brick, not steel, and it still couldn't penetrate. It's lodged in the wall. Tourists go and see this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Second image, that's a flock of geese did that. Bird strikes. They've caused emergency landings. And there's my fave right there. I mean, it could even penetrate a light post. Didn't even knock it over. It just cut right through it. So I've got lots of images like this, but this is something a little bit more recent, and people are commenting on it. And I think a lot of new minds were kind of jarred by this, because I did see this kind of explode all over the Twitterverse too. Doesn't look like 9/11, does it? So
yep.
So for all of these reasons, I really lean towards this being an op. I'm almost pretty sure, actually, now.
You got me thinking, man. You definitely do. Well, and when you mentioned you were going to talk about this tonight, but by the way, before anyone completely dismisses this as being crazy, if this were to be an op, which kind of smells like one, but who knows? It's not the first time, in my opinion. I don't remember the exact date. I want to say it was December of 2024, somewhere around that time period. There was a South Korean 737
Yeah.
that we're told lost both engines because of a bird strike and had to do a belly landing. Now, if you've ever watched planes land on their belly, one of the fortunate things, even though it's a very dangerous thing, is because of the amount of friction, they don't have to generally worry about the plane stopping because you're literally scraping on concrete, right?
Yeah.
This one, well, let's take a look at what happened with this one.
Yeah.
Jeju Airlines passenger jet touched down in Muon, South Korea, the belly of the jet skidding on the tarmac before it slams into a concrete wall, exploding into a fireball. Flight 2216 was carrying 175 passengers from Bangkok.
Just completely disintegrated. Now, I found this odd for a number of reasons. Number one, no way this dude comes in this hot, this far down the runway without any engines. Just wouldn't happen that way. It almost looked like the damn thing was picking up speed. So that was the first thing that jumped out at me. And obviously it disintegrates into the wall. It was a 737. That adds up to 17, but it is also the most common plane in the world. So maybe you could discount that one out. But this guy said 175, but do you know what the actual final number of dead was? 179. That adds up to 17.
And it's got the 17 embedded. I noticed there's no sparks either.
Right.
It's going on, scraping on his belly. I mean, come on. That's got to be sparking like crazy.
And the third reason I think it may have been a psyop is I believe it was my most viral post I ever made. It got like 2 million views, which is a absurd amount for my little X account. And all I did is I put that video up and I said, maybe the better question people should be asking when they look at this is how a plane disintegrates when it hits a concrete wall, but not when it hits a concrete and steel building. That's all I wrote. And somebody in the powers that be pushed it out to 2 million people.
Wow.
So, you know, this one I look at very side-eyed and look, you don't need to be a genius to know that you can absolutely, with the technology they have a plane take off, fly itself, and land without anyone being on it and produce something like that if you wanted to. That is not a stretch of the imagination. So I immediately, when you brought this up, I immediately went back into the archives and pulled this out. Because in my look, the other one I still look at side-eyed is that the one in DC where the American Airlines plane supposedly crashed with the helicopter. There was that one in Philly that supposedly dive bombed out of the sky. You know, there's been some odd stuff going on. So when you brought this, I don't think it's that far outside of the realm of possibilities to have this kind of conversation. Not at all. All righty. Well, let's see what happens next.
Is there another slide on that one?
I think nope.
Oh, there wasn't. Okay, I meant to send it to you separately. Well, it's Trump's avatar at Truth Social. 9/11 war paint on his face. Once it's one of those things. Once you're told about it and you see it, it really clicks. Maybe you could pull that up real quick. But, you know, in my book, I've got a whole collection of statements and wink winks by Trump himself and make it clear to me that this is something near and dear to his heart. And he's going there eventually. And just a few weeks ago in that Kim Clement post, Kim Clement is talking about the guardian of 9/11. I will not forget 9/11. He's talking about Trump, right? But before that happens, we've got to have Bibi do something really stupid. And I believe that's in the works. So there it is. This is Trump. He chose this as his Truth Social avatar. 9 stars. 2 of them are halves. You put them together, it's 9 stars. And you see the number 9 painted on his face. And then the 2 columns. 9/11 right on his face.
Yep.
So.
What time did he walk out to the State of the Union? Exactly 9/11.
Yeah.
Dan Scavino, 20 minutes after the State of the Union, gave us a 9/11 comm. You see something like this happening. We're on the lookout for potential false flags. We're being inundated with news about terror cells. You know, these are all the data points that people just should
That's
probably
right.
keep in mind
Yep.
this way. If you see something pop off, you stay comfy
Yep. Yep.
because they seed all this stuff. Absolutely.
Laura Loomer, one of our favorite villains, she's talking about there's going to be another 9/11. So she's putting that out there, and I'm convinced that she plays the role of the bad, just like professional wrestling.
Yep.
I don't think there are any good guys or bad guys left at this point. I am convinced that Laura Loomer, Shapiro, Levin, these people are all under submission or they've been replaced. I mean, Shapiro and Levin, frankly, look different. They're probably gone because they were Mossad agents. But it's an interesting debate, and I just kind of sit back. I'm amused by it because it gets real. It's real insofar as people following it feel those same emotions on both sides. You say, but that's perfect because that draws more eyes and more attention. So whatever side of the issue you're on, pro-Israel, anti-Israel, everybody's talking about Israel controlling the United States now. Absolutely forbidden conversation not too long ago. So that's the point. But if you watch too much of it, you'll get drawn in and you'll actually find yourself hating people. That's the funny part about it, right?
Yeah.
Like pro wrestling.
But I think it is pro wrestling. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Good guys become bad guys become good. We've seen it over and over and over again. And again, I know this audience is pretty comfy in general. But just having some other conversations around and watching what's going on the Twitter sphere, it's just the people. Every time something like a Joe Kent happens, people just sit there and just lose their minds. And I'm like, wait a second, who cares what he did or didn't do? Look, and at the end of the day, does it matter if I can sit here and prove in my mind that it's a psyop? It doesn't, because the net effect doesn't change.
Yeah.
They're still getting everyone to talk about it, so that's all that really matters. So I don't, I don't get bothered by blackpilling because, like I said on Joe's show today, in my opinion, when you go down the list, I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 times when there is a black pill type event or argument that's going on, if you really slow down, you could tie it back to a purpose. And Joe Kent's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson, the first day after the Iran thing, came out and started shitting on it. Everyone's like, oh my God, Tucker, he hates. Stop and slow down and realize what the message. And since that day, it's been a nonstop. Candace has gotten on board and Tucker's gotten on board. Now you got Joe Kent pushing the button and more and more and more. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, Mike, if this thing drags out, if you start seeing other people from the Trump administration pull Joe Kent. And that's fine. Let it happen. Let it happen, because they have a way to bring it all back around. Remember that drop? I'd gladly take all these slings and arrows, but even that can be undone. And I think that line, but even that can be undone, can be applied to any type of black pilly situation that you see out there. I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight, just because they asked me to do so. So before we jump into Mike's next story, I'm just going to quickly run our one ad over here on Rumble for our friends over at GDR Labs. Had a lot of you, they asked us to space it out in the show. So our sponsors would allow us to do this 5-6 days a week. So of course we want to do right by them. So I'm going to run this 1 minute and 17-second clip. You will only see it on Rumble. If you guys are watching on Pilled or X, you'll see a placeholder. And we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit of Mike's take on the current Israel and Iran situation. So 1 minute, 17 seconds. We'll be right back. You know what no one warns you about with chronic aches and pain? It doesn't just hurt your body. It steals your sleep, your mood, your patience, your life. And Big Pharma's solution? Another pill, another refill, another dependency. But here's the truth. Your body already has its own painkillers. They're called endorphins, and they're designed to shut pain down naturally. The problem? Stress, inflammation, and age can explain why most people aren't activating them anymore. That's why people are swearing by quinolidine, some even calling it nature's morphine. Not because it numbs you, but because it helps switch your endorphins back on. The same relief pathway pain meds try to copy without the fog, addiction, or gut damage. 14 years of research, over 2 million bottles shipped, and real people are finally sleeping through the night moving without wincing, and feeling like themselves again. Right now, you can try it risk-free for 90 days for less than $1 a day. Science-backed and made right here in the USA. If you're done managing pain and ready to end it, this is for you. Tap the link below or visit trykono.com/treason. That's trykono.com/treason. Your body already knows how to heal. This just helps it remember. And our thanks to our friends over at GDR Labs. I had a lot of you guys come up to me with positive feedback about that during Threadfest. I appreciate that. And as with any sponsor, your feedback via however it may be, direct message, email, is always greatly appreciated. That allows us to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of how these things are working out for people and make adjustments where necessary. But again, our thanks to GDR Labs. They've been with us for over a year now. So, all right, Mike, let's jump back into it. This one is Q, Trump and Iran foiled Israel's scheme, from realnewsandhistory.com. Have at it, my friend.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, here's the headline. Israel thought it could spur a rebellion inside of Iran. That hasn't happened. So now, of course, first thing you have to, everything's got to be viewed through the lens of the Q operation. Israel is under submission. Israel doesn't exist. Okay, this is just make-believe. So how are they going to spur a rebellion if it's make-believe? Well, it's all the white hats were orchestrating this so-called rebellion, and it hasn't happened. Which means what? It was never intended to happen. So that was all part of the illusion, this spontaneous uprising, and it's to. I believe it's to demonstrate what would have happened, because this is exactly what Israel was planning. Once they dragged us into war, they would activate their Mossad assets in the Iranian diaspora, like this clown over here, the son of the Shah, Pahlavi, and also the internal traitor networks in Iran. Now, not an expert on internal Iranian politics. I'm sure there's people who oppose the regime and there's people who support the regime, etc. But the main point to understand is how these color revolutions are engineered by CIA Mossad. They recruit internal traitors, and these people aren't going anywhere. But what has happened is they've been smoked out by these maneuvers. Yep. They still think Israel's in business. Okay? So by smoking these people out, Iran is getting rid of their internal traitors. And why would the white hats want that? Well, the Q post. What if POTUS is working with Russia and China and other countries? And I am convinced 100% that list of other countries includes Iran. Do you know how close Iran is with China and Russia economically, militarily? You think they're just going to sit back and just say nothing? No.
Right.
They're all in cahoots, and they're cleaning out the internal Mossad CIA elements, because whatever remaining pockets there were, something like this duped them into showing their cards. And indeed, how many Trump himself said, rise up, this is your time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So bad news for the Iranian diaspora agitators and their clown prince. And you see them all over the internet. And most of these accounts, well, in the past, they would have been run out of Tel Aviv, but now it's probably white hat engineer. But pockets of it are real, I'm sure. And this character here, I don't know if he's playing a role or if he truly believed he's going to be installed as the next Shah of Iran. Who knows what's real and what's not real? But what's interesting is it was an appearance. I don't know if it was on Fox or not, where his eyebrows and his nose were just so exaggerated. It had to have been done deliberately. That ain't him. Yeah, he has thick eyebrows. He doesn't have eyebrows that thick. And the nose, that's not even the one. There's one which is really even worse. He almost looked like, you ever see those party glasses you wear with the thick eyebrows and the big nose? That's what he looked like. Who's doing that?
Great point.
So anyway, this is just yet more evidence of wag the dog. Trump and Iran together foiled the Israeli scheme, which was no longer an Israeli scheme, but just a reenacted one, more than likely to smoke out the final pockets of resistance, because they've been building a color revolution network, CIA and Mossad has, in Iran for a long time. Okay.
Yeah, and if you've ever, and Mike, you're going directly to the what like Colonel Tanner Watkins does a lot of work on the entire Operation Gladio network, and look at Venezuela. Yeah. Venezuela is another example, right? Where's the insurgency?
Yeah.
Where's the uprising? Where are the people trying to fill the? I know I say this every week, and I'll continue to.
Yeah.
Because there's another example of what you're not seeing what you would normally see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Venezuela is more stable now than it was before, it seems. It's just weird, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, all of these networks have been put away. And this goes hand in hand with the other pieces we've done on the elimination of the NGO subversive networks worldwide.
Yep.
Okay. Countries nobody's ever even heard of in Africa, Southeast Asia, everybody in unison telling the NGOs, pack your shit and get out of our country. And this ties in with that. So there will be no color revolution in Iran for this reason.
And
you look at that. So, go ahead.
Real quick, I don't know if you could believe it or not, but from my same thing, I'm not an expert either, but from my limited study, I've told it's about, my understanding, it's about an 80-20 in terms of support. 80 against the regime, 24. Well, if there's 20% for, that's a lot. That's a big group. Yeah. So it would require quite a bit of back channel, special operations, whatever it is, work to neutralize that.
Yeah. Well, from what I've been told from people who know Iranians in Iran and how they think and react, that something like this, I mean, there are strong people, proud people, regardless of whatever political inclinations they have, they're not going to allow U.S. and Israel to dictate who their leader is.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever divisions existed, this would certainly be a powerful unifying effect. Okay. Yep. They're not going to say, we're not going to be ruled by a bunch of Mossad puppets. This guy had no shot of ever coming back. There's a sub-headline. President Trump hopes that an Israeli plan to ignite an internal uprising could bring war to a swift end, have so far been dashed. The plan never existed. That's why it's not working.
Yep.
Okay. Now here's an excerpt from the New York Times article, and I call it the Q York Times. Now pay very close attention to what they're actually revealing here, because this is all stuff that was forbidden to talk about. It was crazy talk back in the day if you talked about Mossad, CIA staging color revolutions. Okay? But look, this is New York Times. As the United States and Israel prepare to go to war with Iran, again, you notice that linkage, U.S.-Israel, always attached at the hip. You read any article in the news, it's always putting the two together. That's by design. In the past, you downplay Israel's role. You let the U.S. take the slings and arrows in terms of public relations. But no, it's U.S. and Israel prepared to go to war with Iran. The head of Mossad went to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a plan. Again, you're not supposed to talk about Mossad. This is the New York Times. Within days of the war's beginning, said David Barnea, the Mossad chief, his service would likely be able to galvanize the Iranian opposition, igniting riots and other acts of rebellion. This is crazy conspiracy talk, but it's always how they've operated, and this article is no longer hiding it. Other acts of rebellion that could even lead to the collapse of Iran's government. Mr. Barnea also presented the proposal to senior Trump administration officials during a visit to Washington in mid-January. So that paragraph alone is telling you the Mossad organizes color revolutions to make them look like spontaneous uprisings. The Mossad tells Trump what to do, right? Mr. Netanyahu adopted the plan. killing Iran's leaders at the outset of the conflict, followed by a series of intelligence operations intended to encourage regime change, they thought could lead to a mass uprising that might bring a swift end to the war. Take over your government. It will be yours to take, Mr. Trump told Iranians in his initial address at the war's start. 3 weeks into the war, an Iranian uprising has not yet materialized because there was never meant to be one. But what do we learn here? This is the kind of stuff I've been banging my head against the wall for years. Whenever you saw a spontaneous uprising in some foreign country, no, that's CIA, that's Mossad, that's not people power revolution. That's all bullshit. This goes back to the French Revolution, same tactics. Always dismissed as conspiracy theory. Now it's regular reporting in the New York Times. You see what's happening here?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
And there's
that's a little bit more of a realistic picture than the one on the other page.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he doesn't look like that clownish picture. So that's who's doing that on mainstream news media. Who did that to mock him? And I think it was Fox News, also CNN. But he made a couple appearances where he was just a caricature, right? Like a cartoonist, just exaggerating his features. But that was the whole Iranian internal opposition and the diaspora movement. The Mossad seized upon that, and they were behind it, and they were promoting it. And all of these Iranians calling for the overthrow of their government. You know, I mean, they might have sincere desires and wishes, but the point is, they were willing to make common calls with Mossad. Okay. So these kind of people were never going to rule Iran, but they did need to be smoked out because they had the capability to make trouble internally. Now, Trump just the other day said something about we have somebody, a respected general, we have him in mind to take over in Iran. And then Iran is saying, oh, that's not true. But then when you look into the general, he's pretty hardcore Iranian nationalist. He's no puppet of Israel, that's for sure. So let's see what comes out of this.
And Mike, there's that, I don't have it available, but there's that, we've shown it many, many times. I think even Rambo showed it today. There's that Q drop from 2018, many from 2018, one of which says basically Trump took over Iran today, and the other one that specifically mentions the good military generals in Iran that are with the people, and at some point they will be stepping up. So that feeds right into what he's saying right there.
Yeah, but because, you know, when you talk about cultivating these color revolutions many years in advance, it can't just be with your street agitators. You've got to get to the people in positions of power. So I think the Iranian military itself was purged of deep state elements who were feeding into this color revolution thing. That's the way to read it. So it's not so much an overthrow of the Iranian regime as it is a purging of deep state elements, because that's always the case, especially if you're going to overthrow a powerful country like Iran. You've got to have some people in high places. Can't just have street agitators. So it's kind of a clearer picture now is beginning to emerge of what is clearly a cooperation between the Iranians and the Q operation. You know, how do you account for all this proliferation of Iranian anti-Netanyahu, anti-Trump propaganda videos all over Twitter, linking him to Epstein? Now, this is part of the operation. Elon Musk has shut that down in an instant. And how come nobody's calling for him to do that? Isn't that strange? Nobody, no congressman, no senator saying, Elon Musk, why are you letting your platform be used by our enemy during wartime? You're nothing.
Great point. It's a great point.
Like I always say, it's the things that aren't happening that you have to look for.
Yep. Absolutely right.
Now compare and contrast that to the old Iraq war days. How many people lost their TV shows? Because I remember during the run-up to that war, Phil Donahue, Pat Buchanan, I think Montel Williams, Jesse Ventura, all of these people were taken off of cable. right? The Dixie Chicks, they had to, their tours were canceled, things like that. Because it's like, we're on the precipice of war. You people are traitors. Now, nothing.
That's a great point.
Why? So thus far, we're almost at a month now. And what do we see? What objectives do we see being achieved? And just the fact that they're achieved is like proof in the pudding. It means that this was the goal all along. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So number one, once forbidden, the subject of Israeli Jewish influence in dragging the United States into an unpopular war is now mainstream conversation. Whether you agree with that assertion or not isn't really relevant. The fact is, the conversation is raging and it's in everybody's head. This is a taboo subject. Taboo means you don't talk about it. Doesn't mean you argue about it. Right?
That's right. That's right.
So that's where we are, and we've talked about that. Number two, the unreliability of America's NATO allies and the very rationale for the war-making organization's continued existence is now openly questioned. I mean, we were raised on NATO as school children, this indispensable organization. Now it's open season on NATO, which in essence doesn't even exist anymore. But nonetheless, we're going to have to go through this, process of tearing it down, just like we got to tear down Netanyahu, who no longer exists, in my opinion. So that was not by accident. Trump's attack on NATO and NATO's refusal to help, all of that, scripted. Third, the internal CIA Mossad traitors of Iran and the Iranian diaspora, characters like this, have been and continue to be smoked out once and for all. And this is a collaborative effort between the White Hats and the Iranian government. It's clear that they're working together. And number four, I've got that one in red, but with an asterisk, because this hasn't come into fruition yet, but it may, and it will be the mother of them all. So this is still speculative. The stage is now set for the villainous SLS, shitty little state, Israel, to be framed and caught in the act for massively escalating a war that Trump wants to end and or staging a fake false flag. So keep your eye on that one, because if that one pops, all hell will break loose. And we're well positioned for it. I can't see them not doing it. I would be disappointed if they don't go that route. The pieces are all set for it. So let's see what happens on number four. But the other three, done deal already. Quite obvious.
Yeah, you can't argue with any of that. The top three, and it's interesting, Mike, that number four, regular viewers of the show will know that you and I had that exact same conversation back in June of 25 when we did the original Iranian bombing. But you see how everything kind of makes sense in retrospect. What was missing at that point? So right, that obviously didn't happen. You and I were speculating. Well, we bombed Iran, we took out their nuke sites. And maybe, Bibi's gonna keep it going, and it'll do exactly what you're saying in number four. But what was missing then that is present now? Number one.
Yeah.
Number one is now that conversation that wasn't there back in June. That was an in and out type of thing. So now in retrospect, it makes perfect sense as to why the stage is set in a much better way now than it was back in June of 25 when we did the first operation.
Yeah. It always seems to work out that way with every increment, with every lengthy interval between moves. We later come to appreciate, it wasn't quite time yet.
Exactly. Exactly right.
So.
Exactly right. Let's see.
And this is not a new article, but it's just another excerpt from a previous one I wrote. Again, demonstrating the obvious collaboration between the U.S. and Iran and the fakeness of this war. Look at these headlines. U.S. encourages flow of Iranian oil while it battles Iran. So we're letting them propagandize to their heart's content on Twitter, and it's seeping out into the mainstream media. Very professional Very powerful videos, by the way, like the one you just showed, and there are other ones. And now we're also letting them flow their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. And look at this other headline: U.S. lifts the sanctions on some Iranian oil in order to get more to the market. And of course, the spin is, well, we've got to keep global oil prices down. Come on, you're at war and you're demanding unconditional surrender. And now you're giving your adversary a lifeline to sell his most important product. And now we hear about the back channel communications and so forth. This is professional wrestling all the way.
Well, Mike, it's funny that you brought up that this slide right here, because did you happen to hear what Trump said in the Oval yesterday? Goes right to this. Take a listen to this.
Yeah.
They're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it. So that meant one thing to me: we're dealing with the right people. No, it wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people. Because, you don't know, because the leadership was killed, all gone.
Yeah.
Khomeini, all gone, as the expression goes, the past supreme leader. And then the new supreme leader was racked up, at a minimum racked up pretty good, and everyone else was gone. And then many of the people in the third tier.
So many people in the third tier are gone. Yeah, they gave us a gift.
Peace, true strength, man. Peace, true strength. USA. Oh my God.
They gave us a gift.
Yeah.
And he said it. He said it. I don't know where, there's something coming, because he's look. One thing about Trump we all know by now. What's that famous Q drop? Has there ever been a statement made by POTUS that hasn't turned out to be true? He's been saying for, I've seen him say it at least 5 times at this point, that you watch what's going to happen with oil prices. You're going to see him come, basically crashing through the floor. So he's got something up his sleeve.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it would not at all surprise me if that infamous, crooked monster of all kickback schemes, the Iran deal, if that was perhaps a sting operation and the Iranians were in on it. 1.7 billion, 1.7 billion.
1.7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I every time I go back to those drops, I'm like, wait a second. 1.7, and we've the pallets of cash, and I'm like, wait a second. How far back does this go? Yeah. I'm kind of with you on that one, Mike.
Yeah.
Kind of with you on that one. What else we got here? Here we go.
Here's another headline. Iran still exporting millions of barrels of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, even as other traffic paralyzed. Everything seems like business as usual. By the way, I got a little inside knowledge today from a reader who's totally legit. He's been following me ever since I started doing this full time, probably 2013, 2014. And he's in Bahrain. And he tells me there's missiles and there's interceptions, there's bangs and booms going on. Same story as Andrew Tate in Dubai. So evidently there's some kind of effect for the benefit of the people on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And he said his family was asking him, aren't you afraid? And he started laughing. No. So, and there's military people. I got reports when somebody says, Mike, my son or my nephew, he's deployed. He says they're on full alert. Yeah, so what?
Right.
I mean, if you ever seen the Hunt for Red October, how does the Russian captain, Sean Connery, he pulls his scam. He has to deceive his men in the process. So that doesn't mean nothing. If there's an alert, if there's a temporary blackout, a temporary internet shortage, missiles, drones, some booms here and there, some abandoned building being blown up, that doesn't mean anything. Of course, you've got to do something for the people on the ground to at least be able to say, oh yeah, there's something going on. No, this is legit. Child's play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always said, I'm sure there's some, like you said, abandoned buildings or kinetic, whatever, certain facilities, things that they probably neutralized a long time ago. And they say, all right, well, as part of the show, we got to get rid of this building. So that's what we're going to hit to create the show. It's not that crazy to think about.
Yeah. And I've seen images from Gaza of a missile strike on the building, and the thing comes down exactly like Building 7, the World Trade Center. The missile's not going to do that. Perfect symmetry, free fall collapse. So
Yep.
it's out there. Yeah, I'm sure they're probably blowing some shit up, and the Q Post did refer to there was a CIA black site established as part of that Iran deal. Something like that maybe is getting blown up.
Right.
Who knows? But as far as this war and Tehran being carpet bombed and World War III, all wagged the dog. That's what's really happening there. I would almost bet on that one that Biden is. I know for sure Biden's dead. I think Bibi joined them, and I think recently these comms were about that. All of these ridiculous,
all the AI stuff.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that, man.
Yeah, but it would not have been an Iranian strike. More like something along the lines of a firing squad ordered by Donald Trump.
Right.
And that center image there, I did that on Grok, and that's really my only interpretation possible of this whole affair. There they are, Trump, Putin, Ayatollah. He's probably maybe he's hanging out with Charlie Kirk somewhere in Valhalla. Playing golf. I don't know if Ayatollahs play golf, but whatever. And, with each passing day, more of this information comes, just kind of confirms the whole wag the dog scenario. And again, seems to be moving slowly but surely towards some kind of significant break with Israel. So that'll be a drama.
Especially like the news that's coming out today, that, there's more, not on the ground yet, but there's more troops, as you mentioned, being moved into position and more ships.
Yeah.
And that's not going to, that's going to further hurt public sentiment on it. So you say to yourself, if it's a wag the dog, why would they want to hurt public sentiment? The only logical thing is because they're going to bring it back around to what the narrative is pointing to with Israel. That makes perfect sense to me. So kind of what you were speculating about it last week or 2 weeks ago when all this started, I was kind of initially thinking, well, this is going to happen, real quick. And Trump keeps telling you it is. He's basically telling you it's over. But yet the public optics are going the other direction. It's going in the direction of it's being dragged out. So you say to yourself, why would they purposely drag it out? Well, it's starting to seem like we might want to be listening to Mr. Joe Kent because, and others like him. It seems like that's the direction it's going in. And that's what we need to happen.
Yeah. Now, here's a headline from The Atlantic, and this is actually from before this latest incident. So this tactic was already in play, and The Atlantic already picked up on it. Atlantic, very establishment, globalist publication. It could be The Atlantique with a Q at the end at this point. We don't know. But either way, the message is accurate. Look at that headline. Trump is betraying Iran's pro-democracy protesters. He toyed with their hopes, raising expectations he never meant to fulfill. And that was from months ago. Now he did it again. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. Rise up. Iran will be yours for the taking. Why are you doing that? They have to be in collaboration. Because these are not the good pro-democracy. No, these would be the individuals who've been on a CIA Mossad payroll for years, for decades.
Yep.
Stirring up shit. So these are not good people. Understand? And my understanding, again, from somebody who knows Iranians, has been to Tehran, he said they're very strong, proud people, regardless whatever they feel about the regime. They would never tolerate the United States or Israel, dictating who their leaders would be. You see? So these elements, these are the people on the payroll of Mossad. You have to ask yourself: is it by unintended consequence that Trump is playing right into their hands, feeding these subversives to the regime? I don't think so. No, I think they're working together. I think they're working together on the Iran deal. I really do. And I think when this is all over, everybody's going to be happy and get along.
Yep. And Mike, hindsight 2020. Guy, those of us that were the plane nerds that were, tracking all the military planes in 2021 and 22 and 23 and 24, guys like Derek Johnson that were posting every day. And not just what was going on here in the United States, but all of the United States and UK and China and all these military big transport planes that were operating all over the world and in the Middle East. Well, you say to yourself, people are, what are they doing? What are they doing? You'd be setting the stage for exactly what you're describing here. You'd have to do the ground, a shit ton of groundwork in advance to neutralize and smoke out and ensure that what you're saying, what would normally happen with the stay behind teams, the Gladio type of CIA you'd have to spend probably years neutralizing all that. And now is the grand reveal, as we call it.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Great piece, Mike. I'm with you on that one. Let's take a minute here before we go into our final piece on Pearl Harbor, our historical aspect of the night. And let's take a minute and go over and tell everybody about realnewsandhistory.com, your books, the Rumble page, all the good stuff that is the Mike King Empire, as it's becoming.
Little kingdom.
Yeah.
There it is, realnewsandhistory.com. First thing you want to do is you go there and you go to the footer on any page and you submit your email. You'll get a free report. It'll give you instructions how to access a free report. All you got to do is submit your email, and the free report is titled How to Respond to an Anti-Conspiracy Theorist. This is another word for normie. I wrote this many years ago before that term was popularized, normie. So join the list, and then you'll get instructions how to access a free PDF so the report is free, and you'll love it. It's an awesome report, and that gets you on my free mailing list. So you get a chance to kick the tires around. Also have a look at the special intro offer. So at the very least, join my free mailing list. Bookmark the site. The site itself, very easy to navigate. There's a ton of free stuff, articles, and so forth. For you to get an idea what my work is like. And just like with my talks or whether it's with my writing, I specialize in taking something that has a lot of moving parts and is seemingly complex, but really isn't if you present it in point-by-point fashion. And I use a lot of illustrations too to enhance the understanding. So I really think you'll enjoy all of my work because it's so simple to come up the learning curve, because that's what we need. People are pressed for time. Do we really want to engross ourselves in 1,000-page history books? Now, just get right to the point, bring up the learning curve. If you like the articles and my talks, if you really want to take it to the next level, you go to Mike King University. The tuition is only $29 one time. You're going to get all 35 of my books and booklets in PDF format. If you thought you never really liked history before, believe me, you'll love this, because when history is presented in the right way, it's suspense, it's intrigue, it's action, and you'll learn all of the horrible criminality that this global satanic cult has imposed on humanity for at least the last quarter century. So you'll want to get my PDF package. If you like the old school physical book in hand, I've also got an Amazon page. Okay, it's Mike S. King. You can link to it from my site. If you don't have this already, you got to get this one, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity. This is great for beginners, and I know a lot of people watching the show aren't beginners, but if you've got people that you're trying to introduce this to, and you find yourself having a problem of not wanting to overwhelm them, what are you going to do, throw 5,000 Q posts at them? You start with this here, okay, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity. And check out my other books at Amazon as well. And then finally, I've got a Rumble channel. If you're not following me already, please follow me. Join Rumble, click the follow button. This way you'll get an update every time I do a new Rumble video. What I'm focused on right now, and I'm almost done, I went through all 5,000 Q posts in about a month in increments of 200 to 250. Not every single one, of course, just the ones that I deem to be the most essential, most important ones. Weeded out a lot of the redundancy and stuff. These are only like 1 hour episodes. I just completed part 23. I've got 1 or 2 more to go. And, if you're a beginner at this, you will love this because it really gives you a solid grasp of the fundamentals of the Q operation. But even if you're experienced in this and you know a lot about it and been following it for years, believe me, I guarantee there's stuff you overlooked and there's stuff you forgot. I know that for sure because as I'm going through it, I constantly had that experience. Oh, I've forgotten this. Oh, I never realized this. And it's really mind-blowing, and it's a great morale booster too, because you see him specifically talking about the things that we are beginning to see exposed now. Hasn't burst open quite yet into the public consciousness, but it's coming. So I really think you'll find this series useful both for yourself and also, again, if you want to share it with people and you don't know where to start, just go in chronological sequence, Q Crash Course Part 1. You start with that. And what's cool about this is in the very first episode, I dedicate about half of that episode into historical precedents, which predate Q by many years. And I show conclusively there's always been a white hat faction in the military trying in their limited way to maneuver and resist this New World Order cabal. So I go through these historical precedents. So then by the time you get to the Q post, it clicks, it makes sense. This white hat faction, which has always been concerned about where the country's headed, they finally put together a plan to act upon what they know. And that is the essence of the Q operation. You're going to love this series. So please follow me on Rumble. That's Mike King at realnewsandhistory.com. Got the Amazon page, the website. And for those of you who already have that stuff and support me from time to time, I'm very, very grateful. This is my full-time endeavor. And a large portion of whatever comes in now I'm putting into like advertising to kind of spread this because I really feel this is important because I don't think there are many people who do the two main things that I do. One of them being fusing together the corrected history with the corrected news into one package, because fake history is just fake news in the rearview mirror. But I really, the way I focus on just throwing out the fluff and getting right to the point, the concise stuff, I think would be very useful to you to use as weapons to share to other people who really don't know about this stuff. You don't want to overwhelm them with complexity. And that's my balance. I try to keep it simple, but not simplistic. So I think that this stuff will be very useful in your own personal arsenals because we're all called upon to be digital warriors, whether you've got 50,000 followers or just 5 normies in your immediate circle, whatever it is, So that's my story. Thanks for your support.
Absolutely. Yeah. The number one question I get from people is and actually, Mike, again, we've had callers on open lines. We've had comments on Rambo's show. We had I could probably, well, not name, but I personally met like 5 or 6 couples at Threadfest who had a spouse there that had never seen any of this stuff before, meaning like they were coming around. They agreed to buy a ticket and come to Dallas and sit and listen to all us for 3 days because they're starting to come around. So, people are always asking, like, what is a good way to do it? Look, I think everyone in the audience should watch that series because, like I said, there's a reason I post the deltas. It's the first thing I do every morning on Telegram, as you guys know, is I post the deltas because it doesn't matter if you're an OG or you just came into this last week. Rereading these drops every year, it gives you a whole new perspective on what's going on. Like you take the Iran thing. If you had just read the drops about Iran, everything that the day that thing started popping off, you'd be sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what Q was talking about in 2018." So I think it's critical, and I know many people are intimidated by going onto the boards, and so what better way? You guys all watch this show. Mike King is as popular as he is in the movement because of his simplicity and the clarity in the way you explain things. I think it behooves everyone to go back and do this and watch this. So I'm so happy that you did this series, Mike.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but I get a lot of this too, feedback wise, about people, their spouses don't see it. Can you imagine being married to a total normie? I mean, it shouldn't affect your relationship, but it's got to be frustrating. You love this person, you're with this person, they're not getting it, or even just close friends and family. But I think, if they've got the capacity to get it, this will help immensely. The combination of this book, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity, and my Rumble series going through it, they'll get it. You might also want to include this one here, Crash Course NWO, because this is the criminal cabal that's been controlling the planet and just doing whatever the hell they want for the last nearly 3 centuries. Globalist cabal. You understand what they are, what they've done, and how much hardship and horrors and wars and economic calamities they've imposed on humanity. And then you come to this is the happy ending. So these two will grow great together as a powerful tool. If they still don't get it, well, they're going to have to just wait for the end of the movie.
Yep.
And that's okay too.
They'll get there. They'll get there.
But I would just imagine that it's got to be frustrating if you do have like loved ones. I get these testimonies all the time. Children, my daughter doesn't see it, that kind of stuff, or husband or the wife. Sometimes it's the woman gets it, and sometimes it's the other way around. Interestingly enough, I think more women get this, or are more
absolutely
more capable of getting it, because it's a little. Sometimes if you get too analytical, which is more of a male characteristic, you miss stuff. But the intuitive intelligence, which women are smarter at, and that's a heavy component of this. So it would be an interesting experiment if you took like 1,000 normie women and 1,000 normie men and start introducing to it. I think the women would be more prone to start getting this.
I think it's something we were actually talking about that at Threadfest. I mean, Threadfest out of 200, we had about 260 or so people there. It's probably 70% female. I think it's something to do with women's intuition.
It is,
and
that's
consistent across the board. Yep. Absolutely right. And while we're on the subject, two quick things before we get into the final article. I didn't forget about the book giveaway. With Threadfest and everything going on last week, I didn't get to it. We will launch that next Wednesday. So as I said, I'm going to be donating a package of all 35 hard copy covers, physical copies of Mike's books, and we're going to be giving them away, kind of like we did a few months ago with the PDF package. So we will launch that next Wednesday. I promise you guys I'll have that ready for you. Also, if you guys are enjoying the show, we have a little bit over 6,000 people watching right now. The best way you can help each and every one of us out is just to simply hit that positive affirmation button, be it the thumbs up button on Rumble, heart button on X, take the red pill over on Pilled. And one last thing is, I know many people, another question I always get is how people can, the majority of people on these shows, 95% or more, watch on replay. And they're always asking, how they can support, even folks like Mike, who doesn't do his shows live, he posts them. So Rumble is doing a lot to support the creators. As you may know, you'll see on Mike's channel or most of them now, a little tip button underneath that allows people that are watching on replay to still support the creators. So they asked me to read something very quickly on Rumble Wallet. I'll go ahead and do that now. Here's a little inside scoop that many creators are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons that we use Rumble. They made a way to super chat creators so we get paid immediately and without any fees. YouTube and Twitch take up to 50% fees when you tip creators. This method takes none. That's right. The platform takes 0 fees. We keep nearly 100% of what you send. You can super chat with Bitcoin, Tether USD, or even Tether Gold stablecoins. The chip will show up directly in the Rumble chat, which we'll do our best to read. All you need to do is download the Rumble wallet on the App Store and send tips to your favorite creators. You can go to wallet.rumble.com, or you can download the app directly from the app stores. Seriously, what an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy. Shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology possible. And again, that's available. You'll see that on the channels right below the video itself. So our thanks to Rumble for creating more ways to allow us to do our jobs and do them multiple days a week for you guys. So with that being said, let's jump into our final piece, our historical perspective, and Trump's Pearl Harbor joke. This is a great one.
Yeah, well, that's what triggered this. It was interesting. He said it. I don't know why he said it. I mean, it's good to bring Pearl Harbor back into the conversation, but he almost said it in a way that certainly one would interpret it almost as insulting of the Japanese prime minister. But maybe there was another motive for doing that. But let's just briefly bring up that video, only the part where he talks about Pearl Harbor. We don't have to watch the whole clip, just maybe the first 30 seconds or so.
Yep, here we go.
See what we're talking about.
Hear about surprise in Japan. Okay, why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay.
That was Donald Trump explaining why the US didn't give allies like Japan advance warning about the Iran war. The reference to Japan's attack in World War II seemed to shock Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi.
Well, she's not shocked. That's all play acting. The question is why. I don't know. Maybe to get Pearl Harbor into the conversation, because certainly that's part of the fake history that needs to be corrected. And I actually wrote a whole book on the subject, or the that element of World War II that was fought in East Asia, Japan's war of self-defense, and that's exactly what it was. Now, she's a so-called right-wing candidate. Now, her movement, it's interesting. A lot of people who support her, and she herself, basically, much like the so-called right-wing party in Germany, they're saying it's time we get past this, And they've even in Japan now, they're starting to talk about some of the things are not quite true with the Nanking massacre and Korean comfort girls. So that taboo, more so in Japan, but to a small extent, Germany is starting to fade away. And I don't believe that's by accident at all, because we see prominent Q influencers visiting this topic. The usual suspects, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Joe Rogan. And that's nice to see, because this is definitely fake history that needs to be corrected. And it's directly relevant to the Q operation, because Q makes it quite clear who they're gunning for. The globalist New World Order. It uses that phrase, New World Order. And they refer specifically to all the international bodies set up after World War II. The UN, the International Monetary Fund. So this is what we're fighting. So that's why I've spent so much time trying to correct World War II. And then my other book is The Bad War. This one you won't find on Amazon, like the Japan's War of Self-Defense. Surprise, surprise. But you can get this one at realnewsandhistory.com. You look on the menu for books for WW2. And of course, both of them are part of the PDF package. But what we're going to talk about now is information that you'll find in Japan's war of self-defense. So what do we got here on the next panel? Okay. In 1940, there were the Anons of the day, led by Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator, was very prominent in this. There was something called the Mother's Marcher movement. And you got to remember, 1940, this is only like 22 years after the end of World War I. What a horrific bloodbath that was. And even in the United States, 150,000 men died. Hundreds of thousands injured. Some of them got a whiff of that poison gas. They had problems for the rest of their lives. So there's no appetite for war. There never is, actually. You're never going to see American public clamoring, let's go overseas to fight war. There always has to be a brainwash job, a false flag, something like that. But 1940, American public, overwhelmingly, more than 80%, said, no way, stay out of Europe's war. Okay? So that's the climate. Now, this is an election year. It's a re-election year. FDR is running for his third term. And these accusations that he's plotting to drag us into another world war, just like Woodrow Wilson had done 20 some odd years earlier, they grew so serious he had to address it. So he continued throughout the campaign in 1940, denouncing these people. They didn't use the term conspiracy theorists back then, but essentially, don't listen to these people. They're nuts. We're not going to any foreign war. And he was emphatic about it. And let's play this clip. This is just a week or two before the election. He's giving his solemn, passionate promise that we're not going to war.
I've said this before, but I shall say it again and again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign war.
Yeah, that didn't age too well, huh?
No, that certainly didn't. And I'll say it again, and indeed he did, both before and after. That was like one of his mantras. We're not going to foreign war. And, American people bought it. They believed him. He's the president, and he was very emphatic about it. But he was lying through his teeth the whole time. And had the public even suspected that he was indeed plotting to bring us to war, he would have lost in a landslide. That's how anti-war and how passionate the public was against entering a Second World War. So he had to make those promises, and indeed he wins the election. They set him up with a nice patsy on the Republican side, Wendell Willkie, who later he was given a job by FDR and later wrote a book called One World. But he was elected in 1940, and having gotten that out of the way, come 1941, he could begin to show his true face. So we'll fast forward through the events in 1941. Well, the big one is Germany and Hitler launched a preemptive invasion of the Soviet Union because Stalin was preparing to take Europe first. They don't tell you that part. But now the communists in the Roosevelt administration, they were really panicking because it went so well for Germany early on. There was this fear he's going to knock out the Soviet Union, and ultimately we want the Soviet Union on our side. So that really began to escalate the pressure to enter the war. Now, this is August of 1941. Okay, that's the date of this newspaper article, August 14, 1941. Just as a refresher, Pearl Harbor is not till what? That infamous date, December 7th, 1941. So September, October, this is 4 months before the so-called unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor. Look at this headline. Roosevelt and Churchill map war aims at sea. Draft a peace after victory plans. Will disarm the aggressors and restore. Wait a minute. I thought we're not going to foreign wars. What do you mean he's mapping out war aims? How are you going to disarm the so-called aggressors, meaning Germany and Japan? How are you going to do that? Like through asking them nicely? This doesn't make any sense. And what this is talking about is something called the Atlantic Charter. You can look that up at encyclopedia, read the actual original document. They met at sea I think it was off the coast of Nova Scotia. Roosevelt, who told us we're not going to foreign wars, and Churchill, they met on a ship and they issued this document. It was an 8-point plan. And this headline essentially is summing up 2 of those 8 points. We're going to disarm the aggressors after the victory. So essentially, this is a declaration of war against Germany and Japan 4 months before Pearl Harbor. There's no other way to read it. How are you going to disarm the aggressor? Because think about it. Soviet Union is on the ropes. At this time, it looks like the whole thing's going to collapse. The German Wehrmacht is like 15 miles from Moscow. They made it that far. So they're on their ass. It looks like they're finished. France had already made peace with Germany. So they're out. Great Britain had to evacuate the continent, so they're confined to their island. So how, pray tell, do these men propose to disarm Germany and win the war? There's only one way. The U.S. has to enter the war. There's no other way to read this 8-point program as a declaration of war on Germany and Japan. It's just a matter of doing the maneuvering and manipulation to bring that about. You understand?
Absolutely.
So here, these are the 2 points. The other ones are just like kind of, generic fluff. But number 6 and number 8, these are the poison pills right here. Point 6, after the final destruction of the Nazi tyranny, by who?
Yeah.
France is out. Britain is off the continent. Soviet Union is on the verge of collapse. And the only reason they start to make a comeback is because later on they get a second front that relieves pressure and a ton, boatload after boatload after boatload of supplies and munitions coming from the United States and the Soviet Union. So after the final destruction of Nazi tyranny, I mean, this isn't too difficult to read between the lines. They just need to add another segment by the United States and Britain and the Soviet Union. That's the only way it could happen. They, meaning Churchill and Roosevelt, hope to see established a peace which will afford all nations the means of dwelling in safety within their own boundaries. And then point number 8, they believe that all of the nations of the world, for realistic as well as spiritual reasons, must come to the abandonment of the use of force. That's a clue. What they're really positioning for is the day when the United Nations controls all armaments. No other country can make war against it, which means you're a slave to the UN. Since no future peace can be maintained if land, sea, or air armaments continue to be employed by nations which threaten or may threaten aggression outside of their frontiers, that's Germany and Japan they're talking about, they, Churchill and Roosevelt, believe, pending the establishment of a wider and permanent system of general security, that the disarmament of such nations is essential. So we're going to set up a world body, United Nations, forerunner of a world government. And to do that, we've got to disarm the aggressors, meaning who? Germany and Japan. How are you going to do that? Please, pretty please, give us your weapons. There's no way to read this. Any sane, logical person, IQ above 50, can read this and say, this is a declaration of war. But it wasn't presented as such.
Yep.
Now, 2 days later, look at this headline. The U.S., Britain, the Soviet Union to confer in Moscow on speeding up joint aid for complete victory. So now this has gone beyond the U.S. and Britain. They're openly conspiring with the Soviet Union, which, Joe Stalin, that guy, how many scores of millions of people did he send to the gulags to die, right? That regime was so brutal, it wasn't recognized until FDR recognized him in 1933. It's considered a criminal genocidal regime. Even if somebody wants to believe these so-called numbers of murders they attribute to Hitler, just for the sake of argument, comes off as a choir boy compared to Stalin and his bunch. And here you have U.S., Britain, and Soviet Union. Why are they not considered aggressors? To confer in Moscow. So there it is. I mean, that's the New York Times telling you right there on the front page. Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin are conspiring. For what? Complete victory.
Victory.
And how are you going to do complete victory unless the United States enters the war? It's impossible.
Wow. I'm like, I told you, I had done my, I know the audience knows this too. My research paper in the 8th grade was about, did we know about Pearl Harbor? And did we let it happen? I kind of reached that. That's the conclusion I reached way back in the 8th grade, but I had never seen any of these headlines. This is even more devastating.
Oh, yeah. Now let's have a look at some of the sub-headlines on that same page. Go back up. What do the Japanese have to say about this? all those crazy paranoid Japanese. Well, they think, quote, Japan sees a tricky plot in the 8-point program. You think? And it talks about the Domei agent. Now, before Pearl Harbor, you would find a remarkable amount of other side of the story ism in the pages of the New York Times. They wouldn't hype it. They would give more weight to whatever FDR or Churchill says. But nonetheless, a lot of that is in there. And this article is explaining how the Japan are saying that, this is a sham, this whole Atlantic Charter. They want to make war against us. It's a tricky plot, conspiracy. Here's another headline on the far right. Stalin accepts the bid. So he's saying, yeah, come to Moscow, welcome. Their emissaries went to Moscow, not them. So Stalin's like, great idea. Let's figure this out. How are we going to beat Germany? Next headline, Roosevelt and Churchill pledge maximum help. So the most evil, murderous, genocidal tyranny is on the ropes. And these guys are, don't worry, we're going to give you whatever you need, first in terms of armaments, later on a second front. And they indeed saved that whole rotten regime from collapse. And it's telling you right here. Look at it. Now look at this final subheadline. The possibility of a wider war fronts noted in the proposal. So hang in there, Joe. Once I get the United States in the war, we're going to hook you up. You're going to have a second front. Just hang in there till the winter, because then at least we'll pause the German advance. By springtime, you'll be golden. It's telling you right there.
Yep. Cut and dry. Wow.
And one of my specialties, and I go out of my way to do this in all my history books, when I can rely on the enemy's concessions in their own words, I love to use stuff like this. Okay? Because otherwise people will say, oh, no, they weren't plotting with Stalin. You're a crazy right-wing guy. Well, no, here's your Bible. The New York Times is telling you. Stalin is saying, yeah, come on, let's meet. Let's work this out. I need help. How soon can you get in a war?
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, this whole time, this is a fact. I got all the receipts in Japan's war of self-defense. Japan is pleading with the United States. Can you tell China to knock it off with the war? They're your proxies. We don't want war with them. Can you intervene? We don't want war with China. There's no denying it. They want to stop. They don't want that war with China. Even Chiang Kai-shek didn't want the war. He had to be forced into it. So that's even more critical context. You've got Japan begging for peace, and then FDR doing all this nonsense and telling the American people, your boys are not going to war. Oh, this is embedded inside on page 2. Look at this gem. Twofold Allied program. Roosevelt and Churchill plan embodies psychological and military attacks. That's an act of war, isn't it?
Yeah, it would seem that way.
Yeah. Psychological and military attacks.
And this is again August of 1940.
August 16th. So that's why the Japan says we see a tricky plot. Duh.
Wow.
And now you got to remember too, like, even though this kind of information and data will be in the New York Times, it's not overly emphasized. It's certainly not repeated. So it's not the thing that makes the public impact. So even though they're putting out these bits of truth, that's just to maintain the illusion of objectivity.
Right.
But it's not, because this is offset by like 10-1 against anti-Japan and anti-Germany, and in favor of Roosevelt and Churchill. So but it's clear what they're up to. Now we go deeper, same issue, into the internal pages. Oh, no, this one we covered. Japanese see tricky plot in the 8-point program. The Domei agency says the U.S. and Britain plan an attack in the Pacific in a move to create what? Their own world order. Japanese were onto this stuff. Okay, this is exactly what Q talks about. And so this is what Japan feared. This is what they knew. that sooner or later, U.S. and Britain is already in the Pacific, right? They've colonized like Burma. The United States is out there in Guam, in the Philippines. So they've already got a powerful presence in the Pacific. Japan see the writing on the wall. Sooner or later, they're going to launch an attack and say, we fired first. How else are you get the country in a war? So it's saying they're planning an attack on Japan in the Pacific. Wild, ain't it? So then, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese had to make a calculation. Do we let them start the war in the Pacific, strike the first blow, or do we hit them first, expel them from East Asia, which they did. They chased the British out of Burma, chased the United States out of Guam, out of the Philippines, and they at least were able to establish a Pacific defense perimeter and gain somewhat of an early advantage in the war. So it's either we do that or we just sit back and have the war on our doorstep. That was their calculation, very rational calculation. Even though it still played into Roosevelt's hands, there were other people in Japan, they said, instead of doing this, let's break our non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, attack them from the west, take them out, because ultimately they're going to turn on us. They probably should have went that route. But this is why they attacked Pearl Harbor, which is a military target. It's not even a U.S. state at that time. It was out of absolute necessity. They knew what Roosevelt and Churchill were up to. So do we want it to start in our home turf, or do we establish a defense perimeter? That's why they did Pearl Harbor. And as you so aptly, I'm sure, illustrated in your high school paper, was it?
8th grade, yeah.
Yeah, FDR had total advanced knowledge, but it goes far beyond that. He not only had advanced knowledge, this is what he wanted. This is what he was deliberately trying to induce. So there's the headline, War Declared on Japan by U.S. FDR calls the attack upon Oahu infamous treachery. Doesn't tell you about all the other stuff we just talked about, even though that was open source information. They just, at this point, all of that stuff gets forgotten. Nobody wants to revisit the Atlantic Charter, right? And let's have a look at FDR with his black armband. And this is one of the great acting jobs of history. Let's just have a look at the first few minutes of this other video clip I sent you.
Yep. Mike, I got the whole clip here. I know you said around the 2-minute mark, so just raise your hand or give me a wave or something when you want to.
Yeah, we just want the relevant part. Yeah, and again, we're setting this off against the one we just saw again and again and again. Your boys are not going into foreign wars. This is almost exactly 1 year later.
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a day in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to Americans. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost.
In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us.
That's gaslighting 101. And by the way, there was a whole series of other provocations, cutting off Japan's oil, threatening them if they go into Indonesia to get oil, you'll be at war, shutting the Panama Canal, cruising through Japanese islands, continuing to arm up and incite Japan. We even had CIA people in China. Well, back then it was called the OSS, or the forerunner even of the OSS. So we had intelligence people and irregular military. Japan and Germany just continued to look the other way. These were all acts of war. That's the last thing they wanted, is to get in a war with the United States. So he's just lying his ass off, saying, "Oh, we were in talks. We wanted peace." Really sickening. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so, just like that, the 9/11 effect. And now you know why they refer to 9/11, PNAC, the neocons, as the new Pearl Harbor, right? The country, which was overwhelmingly anti-war in an instant, war mania gripped the country and millions of young men. You look at this picture, I swear some of these kids look like they're 15, 16. It was common. They would lie about their age.
Yeah.
To go and serve. They were whipped up into such a frenzy and totally brainwashed and bamboozled because they didn't know any of this backstory that was building up. People like Charles Lindbergh, you can just imagine and sympathize with it because you know what we go through trying to wake people up, right? And we've got the internet in our disposal.
Right. Imagine back then. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're trying to warn. No, it's not true. He's plotting to get us into war. Nobody listened to them. And then this moment came. And boy, the next 4 years would be some heavy duty, really severe brainwashing. And it continued. They kept that war fever going. So then by the time the war is over, and by the way, as this is unfolding, they're already positioning for what's going to happen after the war, which is the establishment of all the things that Trump and Q are killing. The UN, the NATO, the International Monetary Fund, the CIA, all of that stuff. And the way they were doing that is that they were telling the people right from this day forward, this was the fault of the so-called isolationists. After World War I, they stopped us from joining the League of Nations. If we had only joined the League of Nations, none of this would have happened. So people were hammered with this really hard, so that when the war finally ends in 45, the globalists got everything, just like everything sailed through. UN, NATO, IMF, World Bank, you name it, everything went through. I mean, about one of the only few people who had the foresight to and the courage to say no was Senator Taft. We did a show on him a couple of weeks ago. He voted against NATO. So that's what this is all about. And we would lose 450,000 young men, hundreds of thousands of more maimed, crippled, right? And this is a particularly poignant picture. These are the Sullivan brothers, the Fighting Sullivans. They even made a propaganda movie about them after the war. These were 5 brothers from Iowa. And they all joined, or among those young men and kids who joined right after Pearl Harbor. Okay? Not knowing the backstory or the geopolitics. Nobody told them. They really thought that, we're under threat. And they all wanted to join the Navy, and they insisted they serve on the same ship. And the Navy kind of resisted. They said, boys, if something goes down, you can't have all 5 of you guys go. They insisted. They got their way. And towards the end of the war, their ship was sunk in the Pacific. And they all went down. And one of the brothers was the last one seen. witnesses say he just kept going out swimming looking for his brothers. And those were shark-infested waters. Sharks were smart. They started figuring out, every time we hear boom, it's dinner time, right?
Right.
So all of these guys they all died. But President Truman did invite their mom over the White House to get a medal. That was nice of him.
Yeah. How nice of him.
I'm sure she felt a lot better.
Yeah.
Sick.
Absolutely sick.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Well, there it is.
Like,
Japan's war on self-defense. And I've only given you a fraction of the injustice and the lies that went into this theater of war. It's just as bad as the lies they told about the war that was gone in Europe. But this is like a holy grail. This lie's got to be destroyed because it's the foundational mythology upon which everything was built that Q is finally destroying today. It all got turbocharged after World War II. It was just such a momentous and deadly event. So that's why this stuff still matters in my view.
it absolutely does. It's a great piece, Mike.
Yeah.
And it's I was over on Joe Rambo's show earlier today, and we were kind of just spitballing timelines and things that still have to take place and everything. And when you look at a piece like that, and obviously we all lived through it, at least anybody older than 26 years old or so, witnessed it with 9/11. I mean, I remember everyone raging and joining the military, and we all know vets that did that exact thing.
Yeah.
And I think when I look at that piece, the way you set that up, and how clear it is that it was a coordinated, planned thing, just like everything else.
Yeah.
And of course, we know the same about 9/11. It just reminds me the importance of the psyops that we're living through right now. And I say that, I mean, from the educational side of thing, right? Like you and I always, I think, have the running joke, like the goal is to turn everybody into a conspiracy theorist. But like, what does that mean? I think immediately of that Q drop that says, you collectively awake and aware and thinking for yourselves is their greatest fear. Well, what does that mean? That means they're not going to be able to do this kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So, when I know people are tired, I know people are fatigued, I know some of the psyops and things may seem so repetitive, but I mean, that's why personally on this channel, I spend so much time kind of doing that. Like that's one of the things I've tried to get better at and focus on more is taking some of these things like a Joe Kent situation and breaking it down and kind of getting to at least what I think is the why. Because you take something like 9/11, sure, we all want the truth to come out, right? But that's not enough. Right? People need to live through, people need to start to, at least a critical mass of people. That's why these things, like, people are sick of Charlie Kirk, but there's a learning process going on. They're learning how, the FBI deceives and how things are buried and how dissenting opinions are squashed, right? This is the first time in history this is actually all happening in the open. And to me, that has to happen. It's not just enough to go one day and blast off the EBS and say, Israel and this guy, they did 9/11. That's not going to teach the build up to it. That's not going to teach how it led to the Patriot Act and all these other things. The goal is, at least to my understanding, is every long protracted psyop that we go through is teaching people, is breaking people out of that. And the goal is to have enough people that are doing what you do, what we do. And so now you go 10, 20 years from now, we have to take away their ability to run false flags on it, period, full stop. And the only way you can do that is by running a lot of false flags and psyops by ourselves. And I think I mentioned this to you last week, Mike King. Chase Hughes, millions of subscribers on YouTube. He's a Navy psychologist expert. I have a pretty good idea that he is somewhat read in on something. One of his 2026 predictions was that the psyops would get more frequent and more obvious. Now, why would he say something like that? Because that's exactly what you and I would do. right? You would continue to make them more obvious so people start to learn and start to recognize when they're being psyoped. And if you take that ability away, you could go through any of the horrible stuff that Mike King writes about in all his books and all the things we've studied on this show, wars, pandemics, rigged elections, you name it. If you get a critical mass of people that understand how this stuff is done, that's it. It's over for them. And that's why this stuff is taking so long.
Yeah. But ultimately, there will be something big. So I think everything we've gone through now is not so much the Great Awakening. Maybe perhaps a better term would be the Great Preparation,
right?
Which is critical. So, most people are sleeping. There's no doubt, but that's no cause to be discouraged because they may be sleeping, but I believe they're prepared for something like, let us say, an Israeli false flag is staged tomorrow. I tried selling that back in 9/12. I didn't do so well, believe me. Okay. Today, what do you think would happen in terms of people's openness to even hear such an argument? I think they would definitely be ready to it. So that's so all of this is serves the point. Yeah.
Take something like COVID. I absolutely believe there was a reason during the Biden administration that we kept getting these, monkeypox. They were sitting there, they were testing, and they were sitting there watching how basically nobody bought it. Well, what does that mean? That means that we have completely, because we went through COVID, because of the design of it and the exposure. And yes, maybe not, people are not out in the streets with pitchforks right now. But like Joe Rogan said on his own podcast, he goes, I think pretty much everyone knows at this point, there's just a lot of people that are afraid, they don't want to admit they were deceived. But the bottom line is having lived through COVID, they're never going to be able to pull that on us again.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think all this predictive programming and the setup and the holes in the Charlie Kirk story and all these other things that have been going on, I think you're exactly right. It is the setup. And I think there's going to be, I actually think a series of significant things. We could do this another time. Like I said, take Erica Kirk, expose her as having her husband killed because of Israel. That would be a big bomb. A false flag, coming in, to Israel. I still think we're going to see at some point, I would not be surprised. The reason these school shootings and these mass shootings like that one in Austin are getting so sloppy is I think at some point, they're going to expose one of these major shootings as literally being fake. Like they're going to get caught in the process. So I think that's what all this setup is. And once you start knocking down those dominoes, you can't trick the public anymore. And the education piece of it, this is the last thing I'll say on it, is what's going to allow us to teach our kids and our grandkids and so on. That's why this has to be done right, and it takes time, but they want to make sure that all this crap can't ever happen again, and that only happens through education. Not just here's not just this is what happened. COVID was fake. It was a hook. That's not enough. There's an educational process to it. So, and that's why the work of somebody like Mike King is so important. And we are, as always, my friend, honored to have you here. I will let you duck out of here because I know it's a late night for you. Before I get to rants and everything else. But any final thoughts you want to leave everybody with before you head out, my friend?
No, I'm just working on what's probably going to be my last episode on that Q series. So, I'm excited about getting that done and just want to emphasize how important I think that is if you, for those of you who are trying to introduce people to the operation itself. So I'll be almost done with that. So that's on my my Rumble channel, and it's also linked on the front page of the website, the Q Post review.
Yep. And as always, in whether you're watching live now or on the replay, in the description below, you'll find a link to Mike's realnewsandhistory.com. You'll find a link to his Amazon page, and you'll find a direct link to the Rumble page as well. So we appreciate all of the incredible support this community has given to Mike. And Mike, as always, my friend, thank you so much for all your hard work. And I'll catch you next week, my friend.
Okay. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Ed. Take care. All right, the great Mike King. That's a weird layout. One quick programming note. Tomorrow night was originally scheduled to be our biweekly situation update with our good friend Patriot Underground. He, unfortunately, because of some personal matters, is not going to be able to do that tomorrow night. However, I am excited to announce that I will have our good friends Joe and Scott from TrueStream, who I got to actually finally meet in person for the first time down at Threadfest. I know a lot of you guys that were there or watched the live stream, so we had them on stage hanging out. Two of my absolute favorite people in the movement. I love when we do shows together because they're two guys that just the conversation flows. I believe, schedule pending, Mickey Coachella is also going to join us tomorrow night, and we may even have another surprise guest. So we will be looking forward to that tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on this channel. So looking forward to that. I can't wait to hang out with those guys again. And then, of course, Friday night will be open lines back in its regular spot, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And, of course, Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time will be D-Class. So I know a lot of you guys head out the door as we start to do thank yous and read rants. If I could ask you one more time, you guys always throw this show near the top of the leaderboard because of the incredible engagement and support that you give. If you could, hit that positive affirmation button, thumbs up button on Rumble, the heart button on X, hit the red pill over on Pilled, and we greatly appreciate that. Let me get over here to some thank yous over on Pilled. Hogleg71 gifted a cookie, and Hogleg71 came in again and gifted a can. Thank you very much. I am releasing the scratching over on Pilled. Thank you guys very much. And coming over here to Rumble, serving the beast with a $1 rant and a smiley face and some applause emojis. Thank you very much. Sherry Berry 1990S, I believe it is, $10. Hey Dave, I just wanted to say that you guys are awesome. Absolutely love the show. You are machines, truly incredible. Sincerely, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Greatly appreciate that. 2F17 with a $5 rant. Good evening, Dave, Mike, and chat. Good evening to you, my friend, as well. Q-Tip 2924 with a $20 rant. Thank you for all that you gentlemen do. Thank you very much, Q-Tip. Appreciate that. Sherry Berry 1990S again. Hey, $5 rant. Hey, Dave, absolutely love NewsTreason so much, and so does my mom. We look forward to watching the show all the time. Also, I have some of your shirts and mugs and absolutely love them. So cool. Thank you very much. Guys, I don't actually very often promote any of the merch, and I am going to be working this year on updating a lot of that. There is a link on newstreason.com to get to the merch store, or you can go to newstreason.shop. A bunch of cool stuff in there, and it is something that I've kind of been neglecting for a number of months. I have a whole bunch of new ideas that a lot of them have come from you for merch. So it's on the list of things to do to get that updated. But if you're interested, you can go to newstreason.shop and you'll find all the merch over there. And Sherry Berry 1990S, again, $2 rent. Hey, Dave, Threadfest looked like so much fun. Thank you for sharing it with us in the live stream. Looked like a blast and so enjoyable, interesting, entertaining, intriguing, etc. Truly great. Thanks again. Yeah, guys, I know you've all heard the recaps already. I cannot say I can't say I can't say enough good things about last weekend. I think I said on the stage, it really was magical. Everybody that came was incredible. Just the love in the room. It really was like a high. It was incredible for 3 days. It went off great. I know everybody had a really good time. It showed us that we need to be doing more of these. So I cannot say enough thanks to Patrick and Ashley Gunnels for putting things together, for all the Anons, and I'm not going to try to name them all, that came and jumped on stage with us and did interviews and everything. It was just an absolutely incredible experience. And there was many moments I was sitting there just imagining how the heck I ended up there, considering that a few years ago I could probably barely get out of bed back in 2022. And that's honestly because of you guys, your incredible support. and obviously all the amazing Anons that we get to work with. It was incredible. And I believe Joe might have mentioned it today, but we are working on potentially 3 more events this year. I am working with Quinny, our good, and Quinny was a rock star this weekend. Thank you, Quinny, if you're watching, on doing an event up in Minnesota at her restaurant at Pub Q, I believe potentially in June. And then I believe, we still have to look at some planning, but I believe the next like multi-day event, kind of like Threadfest, will be a cruise. That is the goal, probably sometime in July or August, leaving out of, I believe, Tampa. We're working on the details of that right now. I believe it would be 3 or 4 nights. So that would be kind of like the same thing you saw at Threadfest, except on a cruise ship. And then as well, our plan right now is to do another event here in Palm Beach, probably in the same venue here in Jupiter on the weekend of the Christmas boat parade like we did. That would be in December. So that's kind of the plan right now, tentatively. Details to follow. We're just we wanted to get through Threadfest, get all the feedback, see what you guys thought, how it worked, where we could improve, things like that. And then start to plan this stuff. So I know a lot of you guys didn't get in on that and wanted to be there. But no, have no worries. Our goal is to continue doing these because I think there's nothing better than when we all get together and hang out. That's what it's all about. So, okay. SCB Crafter, $20 rant. So if Flynn canceled several weeks ago, this Joe Kent thing came out after that time, right? So how did Flynn know that he would be doing a conference and meeting with Kent and Candace that far and canceled? I'll let you decide that. Maybe because it was a part of a plan. I don't know. No idea, but it's an interesting coincidence, right? Rambo and Friends, Joe Rambo, good to see you, buddy, with a $20 rant. Cheers, boys. Thank you, brother. See you tomorrow on the roundtable, 2 p.m. Eastern over on Rambo and Friends. Vicky Dirk with a $5 rant. Oh my God, my sister still says 9/11 had planes. And I said, WTF then happened to Building 7. Debris is what she said. Normie, idiot brainwashed that USA CIA government wouldn't hurt its people. Yeah, a lot of those still out there, but we chip away at them every day. And I'm kind of in agreement with Mike King. Trump has seeded so much stuff about 9/11. I think that is one of the big things that is near and dear to his heart. To at some point expose to the American people. I don't see any way we get through this without that being brought out to the public. That has to be done simply so it can never happen again. Parkmon 1 with a $2 rant. Great show, Dave and Mike. I always come away with confirmation and questions. Appreciate that. Well, that's the idea. We want to get everyone thinking. We don't have all the answers. Saint Sugar, the Conspiracy Cat official fan club, $1 rant. My intuition tells me that the 100,000 plus Anon accounts on X who are diehard MAGA and blind to Israel influence in the Iran conflict, Epstein files, and hate for anti-Zionist agents are actually white hat agents. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. At least quite a bit of them. I've discussed extensively, and Eric Carlson did a brilliant Substack on the importance of blackpilling. So I'm with you on that. I don't think they're all just out there losing their mind. I think there's definitely coordination on both sides, just like we see on the television. Jason Holmes with a $1 rant. Dave, are there going to be any more Wednesday call-in shows for Mike? Yes. I don't know when it's going to be on the schedule, but we will get back on that. Thank you, Jason. Parkmon 1 with a $2 rant. Mike's confidence makes his points so smart. We were fooled so thoroughly. In many ways. Thank you, my friend. Annie Chow with a $20 rant. Thank you both. Thank you, Annie. Appreciate that. Keep scrolling here. Got a couple more, I believe. Here we go. Kermit 4 Swiggler with a $5 rant. I have purchased 4 of your books, and after I'm finished, I give them to my dad. He's big in world history as he served 21 years in the Navy. Thank you for that, friend. I will screen cap that and send it over to Mike. Since I know you were aiming that at him. I appreciate that. and we appreciate the support of Mike. Denise Volbrack with a $10 rant. Yet another excellent show, gentlemen. So appreciate you. An amazing Threadfest 3 weekend. Thank you all. Yes, it was Denise. Thank you again. Parkmon one $2 rant. Not everyone is you guys or Derek. Repetition is necessary. This is true. Q tells you repeats are important. Repeats are necessary. The Mr. Leota. Good to see you, brother. $17 rant. Dave, thank you for the shout out from the stage at Q&A. Great seeing you again, my friend. Thank you, Mr. Leota. Another great person in this movement that did so much work. Helped with a lot of the videos and such on Threadfest, and was just a great ambassador for everybody down in Texas. So thank you, brother. It was great spending time with you. I can't wait to see you again. Freedom 17 with a $47 rant. Back to the plane crashes. They happened on March 22nd. The Skull and Bones number is 322. Sheila Holmes pointed out all this goes back to 47 Genesis 322. Yeah, I got to admit, when Mike came to me with that El LaGuardia story at first, I was kind of looking at it side-eyed, but now I start seeing the dates and the 17s and the 34. It's very interesting. And the 322. Great point there. The St. Sugar, the Conspiracy Cat official fan club, again, $1 rent, would totally come visit for a cruise ship. Cruise spelled with a Q. Ooh, I like that idea. Thank you. Appreciate that. And again, hopefully we'll have information coming up on that soon. I believe I got everybody here. Yes, that is it. All right, guys. So that is going to do it for us tonight. Of course, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for your support, for your incredible chat. The chat was on fire tonight. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our incredible admins and moderators, Carrie Cat, Claudia, Doug, and Magadai 1776 for all their help. You guys are the best in the business. One more just came in. WhitBWASG is the username. $2 rent. Hey, Dave, love hanging out with you at Threadfest 3. Say it again. Whitney B was G. Oh, see. Thank you. You actually came up to me and told me how to pronounce this. I forgot it. Whitney B was G. That's the username. Love your face. Thank you, Whitney. Appreciate that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Again, reminder, tomorrow night, hope you guys will all tune in to hang out with the boys from TrueStream. Like I said, I think Mickey and maybe Matt will be joining us, and maybe even another surprise guest. Should be a great time tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, call-in show on Friday, D-Class Saturday. That's going to do it for us. Thank you, guys. Remember, focus on the signal. Ignore the noise. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, everybody.
That song's from my old one-eyed father. Came back from the service with one eye. He never complained about it my whole life. And all the stuff I do for the great, mighty USO and all the good work they do for our fantastic military. It's all in dedication to my father. And I like to do this song.
That's treason. That's treason. They say, holy shit, they caught us. They caught us.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.